Hey everyone, another day in the fish room. Got some breeding setups I want to do. I have to empty a tank out for some new fish coming in tomorrow, and I got to clean up some tanks that got, taken over by algae, and we'll see what other trouble I get into. I always manage to find some work that needs to be done as I'm doing other projects. So let's get started. I thought I'd start with these albino red ear koi guppies. I've had these guys for about a month now, and they seem to have acclimated pretty well. Still putting some erythromycin in here. This one female has her fins that are kind of clamped down, so we're taking care of that. But I want to start focusing on breeding these guys, so I'm going to start feeding pretty heavy. This tank has grown in nicely already. We could see the Pogostem enceladus octopus in the back, and the entire top of this tank is covered in frog bit, and I've let that grow out of control because we look from the side view here, there's a ton of cover for any babies that will come out. There actually were fry in here the first day that I got these guys, so I guess the females got stressed being shipped, put into a new tank, and there were fry in here, and I was more focused on having the fish be healthy and have a safe acclimation than trying to save some new babies and all that. So in hindsight, I should have probably grabbed those few fry because these guys are fry eaters. So I'm gonna actually put an auto feeder on this tank to help with that, and I'm also gonna add some shrimp and snails, more snails than I have right now. Right now I have the blue ram's horn snail in there. I'm gonna put a few more in there to help clean up the excess mess from the overfeeding I'm going to do. And the shrimp usually explode when I'm overfeeding, and gives the guppies some distraction for any fry that are born. They might try to hunt a shrimp or be distracted by shrimp swimming around the tanks. Anything to give the fry more of a chance to survive. So I'm going to add the shrimp here. I put some food in to distract the guppies, to give the shrimp a chance to hide out. Anytime you have shrimp with fish, there's a chance that the shrimp will get eaten, and that's a risk you have to take unless you have a shrimp only tank. These guys, these yellow Neocaridina shrimp that I'm adding, are a weird branch off that I have of my yellows that kind of like are, they have a nice yellow back, but then the body's almost like a green. So that was like a weird accident that happened, that colony turned out to be a little bit more green. So I'm okay with them getting eaten. They're more for cleanup. The main focus in this tank is the guppies. And if the shrimp explode, that's great. If some get picked off, that's fine with me. And I've got the auto feeder on here. This is the Eheim auto feeder. I really like this one because there's a lot of flexibility with the feeding times and with the nozzle here, how much food comes out. What I have in the auto feeder is this Fluval Bug Bites, the formula made for small fish. Really great, perfect size for guppies, both adults and the fry. You can crumble it up and the fry will pick at it. And this tank will get 3 auto feedings of the Fluval Bug Bites. And then I do feed at least twice a day live baby brine. And that's how I do, most of my guppy tanks that I really want to crank out the fry. Something I also wanted to show today was how I maintain my platinum Dumbo ear red mosaic elephant ear guppy strain. So I actually have 2 tanks of these guys, and the tank on the right is my breeding stock, and the tank on the left is the ones that I let grow out and I eventually sell from. So if we take a look at the breeders, we can see I'm a couple generations in with this line, but my latest generation male, or I should say my earliest generation, you can see he's getting all ratty, but he was the best that I had with the biggest ears, but he ended up getting a bacterial infection. Some of these big females nipped at him. But now we see some nice males like this guy right up front with the nice big ears of the next generation. These are the ones that I selected that have the nice blue metallic color to the body. And then I also want to make sure that the ears grow. Like right now, those are pretty small because these guys are still young, but I'm confident that the ears will grow nicely. But usually what I do in this tank is if I see so I try to pull out all the fry and leave the breeding adults. If I see especially any males sexing out, I throw them into this tank. And we look at this tank, and it looks a little different. I haven't done this in a while. I usually do this every month or so. But we can see some of these males, like see this guy? That's not what we're looking for in this strain. The ears aren't even colored, and the pattern is a little wrong. So I don't want him with my breeding stock. I want to pull him out and make sure he's not breeding with my breeding females. So this line, it breeds true. They say that any line is set when it breeds. I think it's either 90 or 95% true. Anyone who says that their fish breed 100% true is, that's just not correct, because if that were the case, we wouldn't have any variation of fish that we have today. Any fish is going to throw something, whether it's a deformity or something slightly different. But I would say with this strain, it's 95% true, and then occasionally we'll get guys that look like this. There's a couple in here because I haven't done this in a month, and I've already, sold out of this tank maybe, 50 trios, and we got a couple that don't look great because someone gets this fish with their order, they're going to be very upset. I would be as well. So we want to make sure that we sell a strain that we're selling, and it looks and breeds the way it is in pictures and video. And luckily for these guys, I do have an extra tank for them. Like, for the average person, that looks like a pretty good guppy. It's a normal fancy guppy that you'd find in a sorted tank. So I actually have a misfit male tank that eventually, as that fills up, it's a 10-gallon tank that just fills up with males that don't fit the description of the strain that I'm selling. And I bring those to my local Petco and get some credit in that way, because they're still good fish, really healthy fish. They just don't look exactly the way I need them to. Just to show you the misfit tank, these are the guys I just pulled out that we were looking at. So this gives me a good idea of how true the line is breeding. If I have a couple hundred fish in there and 15, 20 don't look exactly what I want in the line, I think that's pretty good. And these guys get to find a new home and don't have to get eaten or culled some other way. I want to start breeding these Longfin white cloud minnows again. I started with a group of 8 breeders. You could see them, the larger fish with the longer fins. Got this female here with the long fins. Let's see if we could find any of the older ones. The other fish in here are ones that I bred that have grown out. So I started with 8, probably bred between 200 and 250 of them. And out of those, the gold ones in here are all the gold ones that came out. I decided to keep those and see if they are longfin. And the fish are starting to grow out. We got this guy here that's starting to get the nice long fins. So I'm going to do 2 batches. I'm going to do 1 batch with a community, everyone in here is spawning. I'm just going to throw the mop in this tank and let everybody spawn and not be as selective. And then I'm going to do a spawn where I am more selective. So with this strain, you can see this guy up top. The fins are almost completely red, and I think that looks really nice. But then we also have some, well, that guy shows the more red there. But you can see that guy with the yellow tips at the end. I really like that too. So that's why I'm doing the community spawn, and then I'm gonna select separately for, obviously, fin length. I want the longest finned fish, but then also the color of the fins, because we got some variety here. And we'll see if we get some longfin gold. I don't think those are readily available, or if that's possible genetically, but we'll find out. We have some random 24 karat gold female that actually grew up in here as a fry, so she just lives in there. So I just threw this acrylic yarn mop in there, and I'm just gonna leave this in here for probably a couple days. The fish are already, getting excited. Probably get some footage to overlay here of them spawning over the mop. And there's a lot of fish in here. Will some eggs get eaten? Yes. There are snails in here, shrimp in here, but they lay so many eggs that as soon as I move this mop after leaving it for a couple days, they'll be fry in the new tank. So we'll do that. I emptied this tank out for the new fish coming in tomorrow. I'm gonna siphon out all this stuff on the bottom. I'm gonna spray the back of this matin filter that's covered in blackbeard algae. I'm gonna spray it with hydrogen peroxide. I have a video on how I do that, if you haven't seen it already. And I'm gonna be adding sand to this substrate, if that gives you any clues on what type of fish it is. So I'm really excited for the new fish coming in, so keep an eye out for that video. Wanted to give an update on these Bluegrass big dorsal strain that you saw in a previous video that I was struggling to keep alive. I had that female in a separate tank, but finally, after all that effort, we finally have some fry from this strain. So if you saw the previous video, you know that I was treating with erythromycin and salt because she had a bad bacterial infection, and I was struggling to keep the strain alive because they were freshly imported, most likely raised in brackish water. So I ended up putting so much salt in here as kind of a last-ditch effort to keep this female alive before, let her drop fry so I could at least raise them up in my water. There was so much salt that the live baby brine that I put in here was living in the tank for more than 24 hours. So that just goes to show how much salt guppies can tolerate. It was enough for the live baby brine to live and thrive in the tank. So for these guys, I've been water changing 20% every day. I want to remove all that salt and get them used to my tap water. And the last thing I want to do today is address this tank. This is what happens when you have too much light and not enough nutrients. So the top row of tanks has the light, right up against the lid there, and there's a lot of light versus these tanks where I have the lights mounted up higher. And then the tanks are also much deeper versus a 10-gallon, so the light, the further down you go, the less light there is. So with the top 10-gallon tanks, if I have them planted, I have to fertilize them regularly or I start getting algae issues. You can see like these two, I haven't been fertilizing, but you have this tank here where I have been fertilizing and it looks good. A lot of tanks on the top rows, I'll use floating plants to kind of fight that. So it blocks some of the light, and also those floating plants do want that high light. But I'm gonna try to take care of this one and try to, stay on top of the fertilizing. Now that these guys are grown up, these are the super Dumbo dragon something. I have to look up what I bought them as, but there's my original male there. But I kind of left the tank. I didn't want to fertilize as much because I had a bunch of fry, and I was afraid these guys would be sensitive like the other strain that we just looked at, the Bluegrass, big dorsal. But these guys are doing great in here now, and it looks like they're breeding true. So I'm going to dedicate more time to them, might upgrade them to a bigger tank. But for right now, I'm going to fix this up and take care of this algae. So I got rid of as much algae as I could. I took the rocks out and sprayed them with hydrogen peroxide and let them sit for a couple of minutes. I went with Pogostem Installus octopus and some frog bit to absorb some of the extra nutrients. I didn't go too crazy with this scape because there's a lot of string algae in the Eco Complete, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get that out without completely redoing this tank. And like I said before, I'm not sure if I'm gonna move these guys, and if I do, I would want to completely clean up this tank. I did put some fertilizer in. The fertilizer that I use in the fish room is this Thrive all-in-one complete fertilizer. And the reason I do use that one, it does have the pump head on it, so it's easy to do all these tanks. I used Easy Green for a year, and once I decided to open my store, I wanted to have a product that I could recommend to people that I knew worked well, but that I could also sell in my store. So I can't sell Easy Green in my store, but I can sell Thrive in my store. And I've used Thrive now for a year and a half, and honestly, they both work really well. Don't have a problem with either one of them. I just use Thrive because I could sell it in my store, and I want to be able to recommend something that I've used and I have success with customers in the store. So that was another day in the fish room. I know I got a little rambly, but hopefully you were somewhat entertained or learned something new. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.